I will now call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the final agenda.
Agenda, yep, superb. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the May 17th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for.
I'd like to
Excellent.
make a correction to the minutes.
Sure.
Under item 4, it's duplicated that Commissioner Pedersen updated the commission on council topics. So I just would like one of those, like the first line of the miscellaneous 4 striked.
Thank you for catching that. Chair, members of the commissions, if you would like, you can recommend approval of the minutes as
For correction.
for the direction of the commission, or you can table it until the next meeting. Preferences.
We'll table it until the next meeting.
We can just approve them as corrected.
I'd be okay with that.
Whichever is the most expeditious.
It's just a duplicate. It's
Yeah, I think it's expeditious to just move
Let's
forward.
do that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Superb.
Second that motion.
Very good. Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Our first item of business is item number 3.1, request for placement of a temporary sign over public right-of-way for Volksfest. This first discussion item on our agenda tonight is, I will turn it over to Isaac
All right.
to staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commissions. Tonight, for your consideration this evening and consideration for recommendation, is a request for placement of a temporary sign over public right-of-way for Volksfest this year. So again, this is kind of a unique item, something that the commission doesn't typically see and the city doesn't get a ton of requests for. But right here over Victoria Drive, the request from the VBA is to place a sign over the right-of-way to serve the community event. So the applicant for the request is Terry Hartman, representing the Victoria Business Association, who is organizing Volksfest 2022. And the proposal is a 80 square foot or 4 by 20 foot temporary sign over the right-of-way of Victoria Drive. So Volksfest and the VBA is requesting to place an 80 square foot vinyl sign, temporary sign over the right-of-way. And the VBA has indicated that they would like to display entities and businesses that are financially contributing and sponsoring Volksfest in recognition of that sponsorship, as well as noting the event branding for Volksfest and the date of the event. So the proposal is for a 10-day period of time, September 1st through the 10th this year. Here is just an overview of the proposed sign location above Victoria Drive, connecting to the Clock Tower building and over across the road to the same building as the Noble Lion. So just to kind of give you a high level of why the commission is reviewing this evening, city code generally prohibits the placement of temporary signage on public right-of-way. For the vast majority of cases, that it's pretty straightforward, just to avoid roadside clutter through town. But the code also does give city council the ability to authorize placement of a sign on or over right-of-way for a period of time up to 10 days. That code language is pretty specific, and it states signs on or over public rights-of-way unless, or the following signs are prohibited in all districts. F, signs on or over the public right-of-way unless the city council grants permission for a temporary sign on or over the public rights-of-way for a period of time not to exceed 10 days, with the exception of sandwich board signs, excuse me. So reviewing this request, city staff reviewed it internally, and we believe it to be something that's feasible that could take place over in the location that the applicants noted, and with a couple of items that we'd like to be addressed. One of them's noted within the application. Upon review by the fire department, just to allow for the ingress and egress of vehicles, if the sign was placed, we'd request that it be placed at least 13 feet 6 inches above the roadway to allow for a fire truck or apparatus to move through. So that was the figure offered by the fire chief. And then with the additional condition, because of the way the code language is structured, to allow for the sign to be placed for a period of time up to a 10-day period and not beyond that, which would necessitate a variance. So that's a pretty quick one here from staff. We also have Terry Hartman with us this evening that I'm sure could answer any questions that the commission may have, and I can certainly stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Isaac. Mr. Hartman, if you'd like to approach the podium, and we'll just have an open exchange from the Planning Commission. Any questions that anyone may have on the variance?
They're not a variance per se, but a request. Sorry.
I have a quick question. I'm just curious how the sign is affixed to the buildings.
We're engineering that as we go, but cables strung across with brackets on both buildings.
The rooftop.
Turnbuckles, eye
Yeah,
bolts.
okay.
It's the first that we've done this in downtown, so we're more or less experimenting, but we're looking at how other cities have done it to make sure we can get it tight and factor in the wind load, that kind of thing.
Izetta does it all throughout the year, so I think it's great.
We think it will be used for more than Volksfest eventually, but this will be the first time to use it.
Any questions for Mr. Hartman?
You're saying the cabling, you're planning on leaving the cabling up?
Yeah,
Okay.
just the cabling.
One of the, as I was reading through the packet, do you have the obligatory liability coverage for that at the same time?
I'm sure we could provide that as it comes from the two private property, both owned by us, so we can
Yep.
provide that.
Yeah, I think that's a, and the other, many of the signs have the sliced holes for air. Is that part of the design?
We're looking at that or mesh or just the sheer strength of the cables.
Okay, Yep.
Again, it might be a bit of an experiment this first time, but
but it'll be reused in the future, so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think people will appreciate that it's there.
Any other questions for gentlemen?
I don't think I have a question for Mr. Hartman per se, but maybe for Isaac. Is 13 feet 6 inches is the fire department's assessment to bring emergency equipment through? Do we think that we have any errant, maybe semi-tractor trailers that might roll down Victoria Drive and snag the cable, and is that high enough to clear anything like that?
Yeah, Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the commission. Great question. It's something that we've been discussing internally. I think that 13 foot 6 inches would likely address most larger vehicle traffic through there, but it's something that we need to work with the applicant if it were to be approved, just to ensure that ingress and egress is available. But we believe that it would be appropriate for the traffic that's currently utilizing Victoria Drive.
Okay. So are we talking, well, maybe now for a question, are we talking a single cable or dual cables, one for the upper and lower?
2 cables.
All right, and then maybe something to, as is in a state of flux, is maybe if there were some sort of breakaway mechanism on the lower cable so that if it did get
Yeah,
snagged.
or if we can afford to raise it another 6 inches or a foot, I think
Okay.
we would do that, to your point, just to make sure. You never know what kind of a air conditioner or vent might be on top
Right.
of somebody's van or.
And there's a bit of self-interest. It's your property that's going to be damaged by it. So,
Yeah.
and then maybe for Isaac, maybe for something to take along the lines of take away as a staff consideration is to maybe survey some other cities about the duration of this 10 days. I see the applicant wanted 30 days, and it's to promote this, donors in the city and other businesses in the city, I presume, beyond your own efforts, correct?
As well as give the community plenty of
Notice,
save the date
right.
time and.
So, I mean, I kind of sympathize with your thought that, 30 days is a nice approach to it. If we're restricted by ordinance at 10 days, then it might be a good time to rethink that. And I'd be supportive of like a middle ground. I don't know about the rest of the planning commission, of maybe something along the lines of 15 days to just give a little bit extra exposure. But for the purposes of expediency, 10 days, I'm supportive of.
Just to respond, Commissioner Vansky, chair, members of the commission. It's very odd code language to be so specific for something that's prohibited. We do have the planned review of our sign code bookmarked as a commission item later this year, early next year, which I think would be a really opportune time to look at stuff like this and probably some of the more out-of-date elements of our sign code in coordination with the business association and business owners downtown, just to make sure that the code is hitting the mark and the intent of the code.
And we're looking at September, right? Correct, for this, putting this up?
Yeah, the Volksfest is September 10th.
Okay.
So we'll put it up the 10 days prior to that.
Okay. So, I mean, there might be enough time for us to take and perhaps consider a variance to the code for the duration is an idea I'll throw out there and let people ruminate on that. But
We asked for the 30 before knowing that the ordinance specifically
10.
said 10, which created does this rise to the level of a hardship to get a variance? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we agreed 10 is okay for now until
Okay.
maybe the code or the ordinance is revisited. If there's a way for you to give us some flexibility between now and then, great.
Is there a car show during that time because you want to bring people in here? It's too bad you couldn't be over 5. Because
have a long enough
you got to be
cable
in
and-
town to see the sign, right?
Right.
But obviously, car shows bring people into town, so if the sign was up during one of those, that would be really helpful.
Exactly. And I think that 30-day interval would get us there. But again, we're not here requesting that variance, right now. I think if there's any other flexibility that you could give us, or if you could approve 2 10-day consecutive permits instead of seeking a variance. I don't want to belabor this any,
Sure.
longer than it is tonight for you, but.
No, well, it's a very, very valid point, and I'm sure, as you know, Terry, that, essentially the planning commission is the research for the city council. So, we kind of go through all the details, and I think it's very, very, very valid. And it's for our town at the same time. So we would have every motivation in the world to make things happen. So,
Good.
very good points. Any other points? Any other concerns on that? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion.
Make a motion. I'd like to recommend approval of the application for a temporary Volksfest sign to be placed where public right of way with conditions as presented and discussed.
Very good.
Can we add that we would like to see it longer? I mean, can we motion, or
Just-
is
Yep.
everybody not in favor of that?
Just as a note for the commission, and Mr. Hartman raised the point, we did initially look at how to facilitate a longer period of time. One of the elements that was brought up, and it had somewhat of a legal review, was, does the city have the ability to grant an exception without necessitating a variance? It was decided that because it would be an exception to a code that the city has, it would necessitate the variance process, where of course you have to demonstrate a hardship, and it's just kind of funky. Something that we could do is just bring back a separate application, or a concurrent application for an additional period of time.
So let's approve this and
Yeah,
deal with that on a secondary basis.
yep. All those in favor?
Oh, you needed a second for the motion.
Oh, excuse me,
Or did
there
you,
a second?
or did you second the motion?
Excellent, very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, the motion does carry. Thank you, appreciate it. Very good, thank you very much, Terry. Our next item is item 3.2, which is a public hearing for a variance from the principal uses rear yard setback requirement in the R-1 district for the property located at 1965 Primrose Lane. Our next discussion item is, I'll turn it over to Isaac to go through the details on this.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This one may kind of feel like deja vu to you, as we heard a similar request very recently, but tonight for your consideration and discussion will be a request for variance from the principal uses rear yard setback requirement in the R1 district at 1965 Primrose Lane. Over here is kind of a high-level look at the property. The applicants who join us this evening are Dan and Alicia Priota. Sorry if I didn't get that right, but they're here with us this evening and can answer any questions at the end of the presentation here. Regarding the property itself, it is zoned R1 and is located within a planned unit development. The applicants are proposing to construct a rear yard attached deck and porch within the required 30-foot rear yard setback, which would result in approximately 2.5 feet of encroachment. Over on the right side is kind of an elevation view of what the deck and porch would look like. So just to go over the code requirement and what we're looking at within the R1 district in Laketown 10th, where the property is, the rear yard setback is 30 feet according to zoning code section 24-1F. And the applicants are requesting the variance based on the following rationale. One being that at the time of development, or Laketown 10th's development approval, a reduced front yard setback of 25 feet was allowed for on the lot, but as a result of a surveying error by the builder, that additional 5 feet of space was not utilized to free up rear yard area. And two, being that the adjacent cul-de-sac is resulting in a unique lot shape, which restricts the buildable area in the rear yard. It pushes the building back, in addition to a larger drainage and utility easement that's present in the backyard. So just to provide some of this context that we recently discussed. So looking at the development approval for Laketown 10th, the applicant's property was listed within that exceptions area for the reduced 25-foot front yard setback. Based on kind of looking through the records at the time, although current planning staff wasn't here at the time, the motivation for reducing that front yard setback appears to have been to allow for some additional buildable room in the backyard. On your screen here is the survey of the proposed deck and porch. Looking at it from this angle, you can see on the existing survey that was initially done, it notes that error as 30 foot for the rear setback, or the front setback rather, and that's shown here. Of course, with the setback, the building was built right to that line that was noted within the survey. So that's kind of what's going on there. And then for the actual deck and porch, the building setback line is shown here and dashed in red. So the encroachment area is this area noted in orange. The yellow portion of the deck and porch is actually a cantilever, which is permitted for encroachment up to 2 feet. So the edge of the orange line is where the setback or encroachment is initiated, rather. And we also have deck stairs that are projecting within that easement area, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So as the commission is aware, the commission's guidelines for reviewing variance requests is if they meet the following. One, that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by code. Two, that the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the landowner or previous landowners. Three, that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. And four, that economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. The board may impose conditions when granting a variance. A condition must be directly related to and must bear a rough proportionality to the impact created by the variance. In addition, the commission acting as the Board of Adjustment Appeals will not recommend, and the council cannot grant a variance unless they find the following facts to support the variance request. That strict enforcement or interpretation would result in a practical difficulty or undue hardship inconsistent with the intent of the code. That there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property, use, or facility that would not generally apply to other properties in the same district. That granting the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare, or be detrimental to neighboring properties or improvements in the neighborhood. And lastly, that granting the variance will not allow a use which is otherwise not permitted within the zoning district in question. So really the charge of the commission here this evening is to find that the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property and that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances applicable to the property. So just in staff's evaluation, this is very similar to that neighboring request that we received in December. Unique lot shapes and technical errors that result in, that aren't necessarily associated with the property owner themselves may be used to demonstrate a unique hardship or practical difficulty to support a variance. Of course, the commission should consider whether the property's unique lot shape and the surveying error resulted in said practical difficulty. In addition, this was a discussion topic, and it's a common request throughout the city, but with the large drainage and utility easement that's located within the backyard, staff try to work very closely with the applicant just to try to stay out of that easement. So the current deck and porch as proposed, footings and all, would be located outside of that easement area. That still leaves the staircase projection, which is projecting out within the easement that's proposed to be within it. To address that, staff is recommending as a condition of approval, if the variance is recommended for approval, that the applicant enter into an easement license agreement, which would establish the use of that easement area for staircase and provide an opportunity for the city to provide notice if there's ever any work that needed to take place in the easement to let's say, maintain that pipe in the coming years.
If they wrap the staircase going back the other way, like a landing, and then coming back, they wouldn't have to do that legal agreement.
Yeah,
It would cost more maybe for the
yeah,
staircase.
that could be a possibility. We can let the applicant speak to that, of course. That would be the conclusion of my presentation here. Of course, does require a public hearing. The applicants are with us this evening and can provide a testimonial or answer any questions that the commission has. And I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you very much, Isaac. I will now open the public hearing, and would the applicants like to represent themselves on this? Approach the podium and give your name and address, please.
I'm Dan Prahota, and owner of 1965 Primrose Lane.
Very good. We'll have an open exchange on it. Any questions, any concerns on the I think Terry's issue. I have my son and daughter-in-law's house in Eden Prairie, new house, and they actually ended up doing the landing and then going to the front of the house. So you come down the stairs as landing, and then it goes to the, so in terms of.
Anytime you can avoid a legal agreement, it would seem like that would be a good thing, but obviously that may increase the cost of the.
It would, yeah.
But clearly, we approve the neighbors, so.
Yep.
I don't see where approval is really an issue.
No. No, just an option that can be utilized. The neighbors approve, and that's all important. And the easement license agreement, which is also one of the all-important issues to make sure that the city itself is covered at the same time. Any other concerns?
I just have a question, and it goes to Isaac and not necessarily Mr. Perot. The previous instance we saw of this back in December, there wasn't a need for an easement license, correct? For that particular.
Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the commission, that is accurate. With respect to the easement, slightly different situation where it actually projects further into Mr. Priota's yard than that neighboring property, but yes, that's correct.
And then if I remember the previous instance didn't require any physical encroachment into the easement itself. It was the sort of the buffer in between the building setback lines and where the easement was, and that was the nature of that variance. This variance is actually coming into the easement proper. I think we mostly understand that the footings for the deck or the screen porch are going to land outside of it, but it's the stairs, and then the cantilevered portion is going to actually be hovering, so to speak, over the easement, correct?
Correct. Maybe just semantics, but footnote, the encroachment within the easement itself doesn't actually necessitate a variance. The city has the ability to grant permission to do things within the easement, but such easement agreements would need to be approved by council, which is typically facilitated with this type of easement license agreement, which is semi-common, not very common, but it is a thing that happens.
So I think conceptually we have the similar situation as we did before. Right. This one is just a bit more complicated because of the building setback is actually pushing this particular structure further in closer to the easement. So
Correct.
That said, my concern last time about it was, do we have any hold harmless language for if the city goes in and for example, has a bobcat that damages this structure, that I think it's incumbent that the city has a hold harmless and indemnification or clause in this agreement that states that should the city accidentally damage this, that it's not the city's responsibility to address that damage, that the homeowner is going to assume the liability of damage to that structure should something need to happen in the easement.
Right. Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the commission. In practice, with the application of these easement license agreements, and it's a question that staff has had, because using an agreement like this has kind of come into practice in the last 15 years, right, is when utilizing the license as a tool, if the city were to do work within that easement area, just as it's currently outlined within this draft, the city would be required to provide a 6-month notice to the property owner and indicate we're doing work within the easement. At that point, the city would have to identify, is there any potential impacts to the neighboring structure? And if there would, conceivably, the city would have to provide a notice within that 6-month period of, we're requesting that you remove these stairs prior to any work being done. But duly noted on the hold harmless clause, I think that's certainly something we can confirm with the city attorney on how to incorporate that.
Great, thank you, Isaac.
And, Sue, to that point, because that's what I was reading in the packet and that's what I was thinking about. So you understand those conditions in how that would play out in terms of that agreement and are comfortable with that kind of unknown trade-off down the line?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear that it's only the stairs, correct? We are not building anything in the easement of structure. We're only the building setback line.
There's only a few of the stairs.
For the commission, I think staff and the applicant spoke pretty extensively about this and worked towards a few different iterations of the plans to remove those deck footings and porch footings outside of the easement area. With the perspective of it's one thing to require the removal of a staircase. It can be quite another bear of a burden to deal with, saying, even though we have an agreement, so now you got to remove your porch, which would be a not great conversation to have, whether it's the Priotas or a property owner way down the line. So that was kind of the lens that it was looked at through.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. We can have a common understanding here today with the current property owners, but 15, 20 years, 25 years down the line, when none of us are here.
You want to come down to the landing and just go to the side a little bit. I mean, it's just a small change. Just the stairs wouldn't go straight down. You'd come down and then maybe just
Turn it for
stairs
4
going to
stairs.
the right.
We can investigate where that would.
It seems like if that could keep you out of the easement, that would be beneficial.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility.
It adds some cost because you're going to come down to a little landing,
Right.
but it avoids issues maybe later on.
Very good. Any other?
I just have a quick question about the license, the nature of the license. Is it?
Is there any other?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's an open exchange.
Okay. The license. So is it a lifetime license? How does that work?
Great question, Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission. So that license agreement, if approved, would be recorded with the property and live, with the property record at the county, so that if anyone purchased the property in the future would be there. If it was terminated, it would either have to be, the termination would have to be initiated by either the property owner that is the other party to the easement license, or the city with a 6-month notice to the property owner.
Very good. Any other comments by yourself, Dan, that you have for the?
No, I just appreciate everybody looking into this and all the work that Isaac's put into this. Our neighbors, Wendy is here to support too, and we have support from our neighbors that went through this before, and we just want to have a deck and a property that supports our growing family of 5, and to be able to utilize that space for the years to come. So I appreciate the time.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. I will Hearing no other public input, commissioners, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, we do have to open a public hearing and allow anyone that wishes to speak on it first. We haven't had the public hearing yet.
Okay. We actually just did that.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe that there was a motion to open the public hearing. It was applicant
good.
testimonial. Yeah.
Very good. So do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing to discuss the,
Second that motion.
Second, very good. Thank you very much. Any comments?
Anybody that wants to talk?
Hi, my name's Wendy Moore. I'm 1975 Primrose Lane next door, and I guess since I took the time to come up here and we opened the public hearing, I'm in full support of this variance acceptance. You did it for me in December. We have our porch. We're enjoying it tremendously, and I look forward to the Priotas being able to do the same thing. So,
thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any other person that would like to comment in the public hearing?
Just to have, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just one email note that was received after the packet was published that I'd like to read on behalf of Mr. Mark Babineau. And that email states, hello, Isaac. I'm fully supportive of the Priota family's variance request for their deck and porch as their next door neighbor at 1955 Primrose. This does not impact me in any way. All of the surrounding families have reasonably sized decks on their homes, and it would be unfortunate if the Priotas were declined that opportunity. From my understanding, this issue is the result of a surveying area during the home construction. The Priotas bought their home with a reasonable expectation to build a proper deck and porch. I stand with our neighbors in asking you that you please allow them to build their dream deck. Thank you, Mark and Sarah Babineau at 1955 Primrose Lane. That's all.
Very good. Excellent. Any other comment on the public hearing? If not, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
I second that motion.
Second, very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. The public hearing is now closed. I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments that have not already been made?
None for me, Chair.
Do you have anything, Greg?
None.
Okay. Thank you. Hearing no discussion, I will ask for a motion. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the application for variance from the principal uses rear yard setback requirement, section 24-1F for the property located at 1965 Primrose Lane, subject to conditions as presented and discussed here today.
Thank you, Laura. Is there
That motion.
second? Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Thank you very much. The motion does carry. Thank you. It is approved. Our next item of discussion is, on our agenda tonight, is item 3.3, which is the preliminary plat and rezoning for Timber Glen residential development. This item does include a public hearing. Before the public hearing, I will now turn it over to planner Isaac Peterson for the staff presentation. Isaac?
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair noted, tonight for discussion will be the preliminary plat for the proposed Timber Glen development along with rezoning request. Just to kind of do a high-level review of how we got here. In February, on February 15th, the Planning Commission reviewed a sketch plat application and also held a neighborhood meeting on the 15th to look at the proposed Timber Glen development, which was then later considered on February 28th for initial comment by the council for the sketch plat. So the applicant has submitted a preliminary plat and rezoning application for the development, which is what you see before you this evening. So just to go over where we're looking at, so the subject property is located at 5460 Marsh Lake Road, which is just south and east of the Laketown development. You see Laketown 16th here and 15th to the north. It's west and north of the Schmeek family farm off of Marsh Lake Road. The subject property is just a hair over 8 acres with approximately 6.1 acres that are developable. The subject property is currently used with a light agricultural use. There are some existing trees and buildings and wetlands on the site. The existing buildings are proposed to be removed through the development process. In addition, the property is located within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. So the city's 2040 comprehensive plan does guide this property, shown here as future low-density residential land. The low-density residential guidance is 2.25 to 6 units per acre. Based on the net developable acres on the site, the applicant is proposing a unit density of 2.6 units per acre. And just again, the property is zoned ag, shown here. And the applicant is requesting to rezone the property as a PUD or planned unit development with underlying R1 single-family zoning. So here's just a overhead of the proposed preliminary plat, showing some additional lots along Bridle Way, and then along an extension of Catkin and Timber Terrace. We can jump back to this. So with respect to the zoning and lot regulations proposed with the PUD, the applicant's requesting a minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet, lot width of 70 feet, minimum lot depth of 125 feet, side yard setbacks of 8 feet on each side, front yard setback of 20 feet for each lot, rear yard setback of 30 feet, along with a minimum rear yard setback from Marsh Lake Road of 50 feet, which is mirroring existing development approvals in Laketown 16th to the west, along with a corner yard setback or a corner setback of 20 feet for corner lots, and impervious surface maximum of 35%. This is fairly in line with the Laketown 16th approval that was done immediately adjacent to the site, very similar to this site, and appears to be in line with that prior approval. The lot requests are larger than what that Laketown 16th approval, but just showing it as a contrast for something nearby. With respect to buffers and screening, and it was discussed at the time of sketch plat, but the applicant is proposing to install a 40-foot landscape buffer and undulating 8-foot berm along the backside of lots with double frontage adjacent to Marsh Lake Road. The proposed plantings do meet the city's landscape buffer requirement and berming. In addition, a 15-foot landscape buffer is also shown on triple fronted lots, which I believe is one lot in the development. On the front of tree preservation and replacement, and it was noted within my background report for this, the applicant currently there's 954 caliper inches of significant trees on site. The applicant is proposing to remove approximately 90.8% of the existing significant trees on site. And if approved, the applicant would be required to pay a tree removal mitigation fee, which is established by the city's fee schedule based on the trees that they propose to replace, in the amount of $55,950. On the right side here, just to kind of get a lay of the land for where the trees are located, these notes marked in X are existing trees that are proposed for removal. Trees in green are noted to be preserved. And we can jump back to this in a moment. So just to highlight the city's code and why we're speaking about this here this evening, as the commission may recall, when we undertook revising the tree preservation and replacement ordinance about a year ago, there was a provision added which stated that in no cases through development shall a applicant request the removal of greater than or at least 15% of the total of the site's total significant heritage trees shall be preserved on the site. The applicant is requesting waiver of that requirement to allow for additional removal. As the commission will recall, in addition to adding this 15% threshold for preservation, there is also a section highlighting exceptions to the code and when waiver would be appropriate. And those criterias for providing exception or waiver of the tree preservation code outline that in order to grant a waiver, the applicant must demonstrate that strict adherence to the requirements of the tree preservation and replacement ordinance would prevent the reasonable development of the property that is consistent with the comprehensive plan and desirable to the city on the subject parcel, and that the exception requested is the minimum amount needed to accomplish the desired development. So staff worked pretty extensively reviewing the site with the applicant's engineering team, and we played out a few different scenarios for preservation of the trees on the property. And realistically, through some of those proposed scenarios, to get to a 15% preservation amount, between the city's engineering staff and looking at the trees on site, proposing to save some one-off trees did not seem feasible without greatly altering the grading plan of the development itself. Primarily, the trees that are existing on site, or the bulk of them, are actually what we assume were windrow trees to serve a driveway leading up to the existing home on the property. So to adjust the grading, one of the items that staff would note is that in order to preserve those trees and reduce the grading limits into where the bulk of them currently are, it may impact the proposed development and drop it beneath that density guidance of at least 2.2.
What kind of trees are the majority?
Sure, great question. The majority of the trees are these spruce trees that are shown kind of in a line here, which kind of act as a windrow to the property leading up to the site. They are quite tall. I think that many of them are about 8 to 14 inches in diameter, but they're about 20 to 30 feet tall. So generally, staff is supportive of the proposed waiver, just based on the site layout, and would be happy to chat through that with the commission as well and answer any questions on that front. Moving on to park requirements. So there is no park identified within the development site within the comprehensive plan for this location. The applicant is proposing to satisfy the park dedication requirement, which would be 0.747 acres here, with a park dedication fee of $78,435. Regarding transportation and right-of-way, the applicant is proposing to provide an extension of Catkin Way to the east, shown in kind of a teal color here. And in addition, the applicant is dedicating adequate right-of-way based on a request from the city to accommodate the future expansion of Marsh Lake Road when that is to take place, which is in the future. In addition, the current proposal does show a connection of Timber Terrace, which is an important connection highlighted within the city's plans to extend all the way to Marsh Lake Road. If you recall, at the time of sketch plat, there was some discussion on extending Catkin Way to Marsh Lake Road or the extension of Timber Terrace. The city, prior to this application coming forward, identified the connection of Timber Terrace as an important connection to alleviate traffic coming to the north off of Hackmore Street. So the applicant is proposing to dedicate adequate right-of-way for Timber Terrace, and the city staff is still in discussion and coordinating with the applicant on what a potential cost share would look like. Currently, staff is recommending that the portion of Timber Terrace from Catkin Way to Marsh Lake Road would be shared with the applicant to pay for that portion, as it would be required to provide a secondary form of ingress and egress out of the development site to meet fire code. In addition, because the proposed Timber Terrace extension is shown to be on the neighboring Schmieg family farm, ongoing coordination with the Schmiegs who join us here this evening is needed by the city to facilitate that connection happening. In addition, the proposed engineering is ongoing for stormwater management, which the city has been working with an engineer and is coordinating with the watershed district and applicant to advance. Regarding trails and sidewalks, no trail is proposed on the development site, nor are there adjacent trails immediately next to the site. 6 foot concrete sidewalks are shown per city requirements on at least one side of each street, shown in blue here on the map before you. Regarding the utilities and stormwater, the parcel is served by adjacent water and sewer connections coming off of Catkin Way and from Timber Terrace. Again, the property is located within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and subject to their rules, which the applicant has indicated, and the city's observed them coordinating with the Watershed District. Stormwater features such as wetlands buffers are proposed to be deeded to the city. In addition, access must be provided and is shown to the stormwater pond noted within the plans. And again, further engineering and evaluation is required, advanced engineering related to those stormwater impacts to ensure that the connection is appropriately sized and designed for Timber Terrace, which is ongoing. So generally, staff is supportive of the proposed preliminary plat, but would recommend the commission consider any comments brought before you by the public here this evening at the time of the public hearing. If approved, staff would recommend the following conditions of approval regarding the development. One, that the rezoning from ag to PUD with underlying R1 low-density residential zoning be approved concurrent to final plat approval. That the applicant shall address to the city's satisfaction all items outlined within the May 23rd and engineer's memo and May 27th staff memo, as well as any and all additional engineering items resulting from the modification of the preliminary plat prior to final plat approval. In addition, that the applicant shall provide the city with copies of all homeowners association or HOA covenants for the development, which are subject to review and approval by the city attorney. that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the city for the development prior to or concurrent with final plat approval, that the applicant shall participate in the payment and construction of Timber Terrace as a collector roadway connection to Marsh Lake Road as established by the agreed upon development agreement, that the applicant shall comply with all applicable regulations and conditions prescribed by the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and receive all necessary approvals, that the applicant shall provide a letter of credit as established by the approved development agreement for all public improvements associated with the development. In addition, that the applicant shall obtain all necessary city, county, and PCA and other regulatory approvals and permits prior to construction. That the applicant shall submit title work along with the final plat submittal and will comply with the city attorney's plat opinion. And lastly, that the applicant shall submit the final plat to the city within 90 days of council's approval of the preliminary plat. And then just as a reminder for the commission, this item does require a public hearing. Neighbors within 350 feet of the subject property were notified with a letter, and in addition, a notice was posted in the May 26th edition of the Chan Villager. And then with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, and can stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Isaac. A lot of detail, Is there anyone in the chamber that this evening who wishes to comment on this item? If so, please speak at the podium and state your name and address.
Yeah,
I wish to comment.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
My name is Linda Margot. I live at 9540 Bridle Way, just adjacent to the property that is being proposed for the preliminary plat. My concerns are for how construction traffic is going to be routed through the neighborhood. Currently, there's an issue with how construction traffic comes through there now, down Bridle Way, past Timber Terrace, and up towards Cocken Way. So my question is, prior to this moving forward and being approved, are they going to be required to provide that access off of Marsh Lake Road from Timber Terrace up through Cocken Way for construction traffic, for development of that property? That would be my concern.
Isaac, if you wouldn't mind, would you put up a map of this so that we can see what, so that we can have a better visual on your concerns?
Sure.
So where,
So
help
currently I
us
live on the
understand where
corner- yeah,
where
currently I
you live
on the
and
corner of Bridle Way and Timber Terrace, just where you see outlot A there. And right where Timber Terrace, that block there is not, Timber Terrace does not go through. So construction traffic coming in to develop that property there at 5460 Marsh Lake Road, where is that traffic going to come into if they don't approve access from Marsh Lake Road to Cocken, if they don't put that in? Is it going to come from Hackmore onto Bridle Way, down through Bridle Way, up to Cocken and into there, into the developed area? Or how will that traffic flow?
You want to take that?
Yeah. Just to back up a moment, I think it would be appropriate, because we have a resident with us here this evening wishing to speak, to open the public hearing. But I'll certainly respond to your questions, but just logistics.
Sure, Chair Iverson.
Sure, well, thank you. I will now open the public hearing.
Well, Chair, we need a motion to open the public hearing.
And, very good, yep,
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the.
I'll second that motion.
second. Very good, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. The public hearing is now open.
Commissioners, are we comfortable with taking the resident's comment as read?
Yes.
Thank you. Isaac, if you would kindly proceed, thank you.
Appreciate it. To answer your question, a construction routing plan for the development hasn't been approved yet or identified, because we're still a little early on in the process. I would anticipate, although I don't know for certain, but we can work with the city's engineering staff. I would anticipate that it would be the preference of the applicant to have access from Marsh Lake Road, just because it's far more direct. What that temporary access is on opening day for construction, I don't know what that would look like at this time. But understanding your comment and concern, we can certainly work towards identifying that as a priority. As you probably know, there's a lot of construction traffic coming from the north on Hackamore, which is one of the, just to kind of back up a little bit, one of the reasons why the city council identified that Timber Terrace connection as an important connection to alleviate traffic. But certainly heard, and we can certainly coordinate on that.
I think
They would still have access to the driveway at 5460 at the beginning of construction to get into there. I mean, you're not losing that access on Marsh Lake Road day one at 5460, the current driveway.
Yeah, Commissioner Kuhn, chair, members of the commission, that is a potential. I think just having these initial talks, at a minimum, the city would likely want to see that secondary point of access from Catkin, from the extension of Timber Terrace up to Catkin Way and over, just to provide that second access initially, which would be the point where the developer could reach the site and access in. But yeah, I mean, there could be potential from utilizing the existing driveway.
So Isaac, help us understand. It's a given that Timber Terrace needs to be extended in order for this to go, correct?
Commissioner Vansky, chair, members of the commission, that's accurate.
So then we could potentially work with the developer on, once grading is done, to be able to bring that extension as a potential temporary construction site access so that the neighboring residents can.
You do have to get right away from the Schmigs, though.
That's correct.
Correct.
That nothing happens without that.
Right. Are the Schmigs the number one grantor of easements for roads in the city at this point?
Right. Yeah. Just to answer your question, yes. I think at a minimum we'd want to see that connection in on Timber Terrace to Catkin. Of course, with the ongoing coordination of the Schmigs to ensure that it's appropriate and something that could work.
Have we addressed your concerns at this point, or
you have. I have one other concern, if I may ask that question. Sure. In looking at the packet that you provided, it talked about the tree issue with the 90.2 or 90.6, I forget the exact percentage. My concern is the outlot A with the stand of trees that are in and along there, that they be preserved. I mean, most of the trees that you see on the plan show that yes, they're going to remain, but we all know what happens when construction takes place. So anything that can be done to preserve that stand of trees would be helpful. You talked about wind shear earlier. Mm-hmm. With that neighborhood, the way things are, there really are not a lot of trees. So wind coming through there is a huge issue. So I don't know what can be done to ensure that. And you had some comments on the preliminary plat with requests for that. I'm just stating that anything that can be done to have them, the development remain within what the city mandates would be preferable at this time. If they lose a lot, they lose a lot, but we save trees.
Isaac, can you point out the area that she's referencing, please?
You're referring to outlot A here. which is to the north, but a little bit off screen.
It would border Timber Terrace and Bridleway.
Right here.
Yeah, that area,
Yeah.
that whole area right in there. There's some stands of trees right in there. So,
The work to date has been the attempt, certainly the attempt to compromise to get the numbers of lots in, individual lots in, and maintain a level of trees. And I can see the complexity in that, quite frankly, from all angles. So, I think it's, I think heavy on the compromise is probably where we're at on that. Any other thoughts on that?
Just
I have questions, but I can ask later.
Okay.
just a recommendation of the chair and the commission to hear anyone else that wishes to speak, and prior to getting too deep into discussion, to close the public hearing if
Yep.
appropriate.
Okay.
thank you.
Real good, thank you, thank you. Julie, did you have any comments?
Good evening, Julie Schmeek, Hilltop Farm, 5475 Marsh Lake Road. And we've just been in ongoing communication with Isaac and Kara as things continue to move forward. And so they're aware of our issues and concerns, and particularly in the meadow there where you see that nice rich black soil that's as Timber Terrace gets constructed just for the whole stormwater management, that is something that we are actively farming. And so just to make sure that there's proper drainage for the field there. So, and then this is not necessarily pertaining to Planning Commission, but as more for the city, as this traffic will move on to Marsh Lake Road to establish a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit on the east end of Marsh Lake Road also, and then the improvements for the intersection of County 11 and Marsh Lake Road. So if we're going to be driving all this residential traffic right down that part there. So that's what we got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you. Any other people that would like to speak on that topic? Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing. Hearing none, I will now ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
A few. I have questions because I'm not real sure about who actually owns this land. So the pond, your arrows at the pond, the land that's immediately south of that, that's the area that was suggested that we retain some of these trees, or Outlot A as it was called, right? So is the applicant, do they own that land? Who owns that land?
Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission. So that outlot is owned by the city. And there's been no request to remove trees on that outlot at this time. Just to kind of look at the process of how staff has been evaluating this, because we've had historical complaints about trees coming down that weren't proposed to be removed. So one of the things that staff does with the development team regarding tree preservation is prior to grading taking place, a component that we require is that there's orange. It can look kind of ugly, but it's orange protection fencing at the drip line of the trees, which we inspect prior to grading and tree removal to ensure that the trees that are noted to be preserved are preserved and not lost in the shuffle. So that's what we would expect and require, particularly because it's adjacent to a city property where we haven't had any request to remove trees, so we don't want to see any of our trees go down through the development process.
Okay. A few other questions. So I'm not familiar with a grading plan. So is there significant grading that's required for this site? Can you comment a little bit about the grading? Obviously, we know some grading is necessary, but speaking to that helps us understand the necessity of these trees coming down.
Yeah, and Scott Loomis and representative of Loomis Homes is here to kind of speak from that perspective. From city staff's observation, one of the heavier challenges that we looked at is this lot 1 and 2 coming in, where there is a grade change transitioning between Laketown 16th that was in place when that occurred. If the commission is familiar with this site, this is the development location immediately to the west, where there's that really big retaining wall in the backyard of Laketown 16th. So there's a grade change coming down off of Marsh Lake Road and across. One of the tricks that we saw is that because the trees that are existing on site are so consolidated, to get out of the drip line and kind of straddling the boundary of the property line, that's kind of where the challenge arise, where in order to not impact those trees, you gotta kind of go out, which would in essence reduce the limited available space for lots. There was a secondary plan where we got closer to that 15% tree removal threshold. Unfortunately, with some of the one-off trees that were included within that proposal, realistically, again, to kind of speak to the realities of grading, to just put a fence around it in the middle of a yard, it didn't seem like it was likely that a tree would survive the development process. And at that point, staff's recommendation would be to just note that they're probably going to be removed on the front end rather than having a challenging experience trying to save it with unrealistic expectations. So that's kind of how we got here.
So Isaac, lots 1 and 2 in that block is from the aerial picture. These lots currently have that access drive going through them presently, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So to the west of that is this sort of swale up, and then that's heavily treed along.
Correct.
Currently, okay.
Is it possible to zoom in just a little bit?
You can try, but no. Here we go.
So, I mean, I don't know if we can pick and choose and try to save a few, but I'd like to request a few that don't seem like they're too in the way. So, as I'm looking at this, it says 17-inch apple. It's an apple tree? Oh, okay. I don't know what our thoughts are on saving apple trees.
Just a note on the apples, because it's funny you brought it up, but we did some of the trees just for the commission that we looked at and reviewed for some of the one-off trees that may be able to get saved were some of these 12-inch apple trees. City's got a landscape planning consultant and landscape architect that we work with that noted that some of the apple trees on site appear to be pretty close to the end of their life. Just age-wise, so just throwing that out there.
All right, I'll let my cohorts here comment more on the trees, but I have a few other questions. The trail, you mentioned that there's no trail on the north side of this property. Is there one on the south side of this of Marsh Lake?
Commissioner Moore, chair, members of the commission, there is no current trail along Marsh Lake Road. It's connected internally to Laketown via sidewalk that's immediately adjacent.
So sidewalk, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sidewalk is what I should have said. So sidewalk, is there a sidewalk that's gonna?
Correct. So the proposed sidewalk is shown in blue here.
That's the sidewalk, okay.
Screen. Kind of hook it into where the existing
Okay.
terminus is.
So it's not on Marsh Lake. Okay. And then, I think that's my questions. Thank you.
So there is going to be an HOA for this? It seems like not many homes.
No,
Doesn't-
there's
the
not
HOA
an
doesn't
HOA.
really-
That was just part of a staff requirement. If we were to submit
if
an
you were to
HOA,
have
that
one.
we'd have to.
Otherwise, I was going to recommend maybe you could join Lake Town and.
Yeah, no, there's no HOA. Yep.
Any other
I actually had a few questions. So Isaac brings up in his narrative lots 1 and 2. If you don't mind, can you speak to would that
Could
be
you
a
identify
home
yourself, Scott?
Scott Loomis with Loomis Development.
you.
What were your questions in regards?
My questions on lot 1 and 2, are those going to be something that's going to be either a walkout lot or a lookout lot?
Those are all full basement lots there. On that tree line, you're talking where the driveway entrance is, the current driveway entrance?
No, yeah, where the current driveway is, correct. And so
Yeah.
they have the 40-foot buffer behind them.
Yeah, those are all full basement lots, that whole entire strip there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, because I think that Isaac brings up an interesting point, and, you know, you've sat through the previous discussion. What I think I'd like to see is that you guys make a disclosure to the purchasers of those lots that they don't have the ample space to put a deck in. That may not be relevant if you don't have a walkout or a lookout lot. So that we're not sitting here reviewing a variance when clearly in our need for a variance, the plight of the landowner is either something that they didn't do or the previous owner didn't do. You would be the previous owner and you would have created that plight. And so that would negate us granting a variance for some sort of easement or encroachment to that buffer zone.
Yes, and there is actually room based on the pad sizes for a smaller deck. You know, I don't have the exact dimensions off me, but I can follow up on that. I think
Okay.
we're at 14, 16 feet. We can get in there between the setbacks and everything.
Just something so that is clear when
Yes.
somebody's getting that they understand from the onset, I may not be able to do some
Yes.
grandiose 6,000 square foot deck back there.
Correct. Yep.
Thanks. And then this is probably more for Isaac, the need to get some consensus on this timber trail or timber terrace cost sharing. You guys are asking for a lot of tree removal, and that's being sort of an accommodation. And this subdivision doesn't work safety-wise without getting that in there. And our safety of our residents and be able to get fire equipment in there makes, every second is going to count here, especially with the distance that the fire station is away from where this is. This is about as far, almost as far away from our fire department until we construct the second site as it is. So, and that is paramount, and we need to, if you want to develop this, it's going to be incumbent to be able to able to get in and get this done.
Yes, we've.
You guys have to reach in a little bit deeper to do it, then I think that the rest of the commission's supportive of that position.
Gotten a decent plan of attack on that, on the cost sharing and everything like that. And Kara, city engineer, and our engineer has been back and forth on that. And I think we're pretty close, so that shouldn't be a problem. The tree preservation, we did have, I think we were at 87%, and then, you know, the apple trees.
Yep.
We removed them, so we're higher and then removing them, and, you know, we're trying really hard to keep the trees, but it's just the grades and where they're planted and what we have to move, because this site does have a considerable amount of grading, actually, because on lots like 1 through 5 on block 1, you know, that's like 20 feet high we had to cut off there. So there's quite a bit of grading to get done on the site. And with the grading to save those trees, it just, you know, we've been back and forth. I can't remember how many times our engineer, was quite a task to try and save everything, but it just didn't pan out to 15%.
Isaac, the majority of the tree stand comes in between which lots? Was it 7 and 8? And I mean, it's interesting to look at it because, so it looks like it's between 5 and 6 and 1 and right in there.
Yep.
Can you go back to that other side now?
Where we just
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah. So they're actually, it's interesting that they would be at that.
There's a
Grading
driveway there
change.
for the current house, so it's just a big windbreak for them.
Yeah, and I think that exhausts my comments. So thanks.
Perfect. And then in regards to the construction traffic, during the construction of actual grading and the site improvements, you know, we would try and use the driveway as much as we can, and it's easier to get that type of equipment in here. It'd be ideal if we can, you know, get everything hashed out on Timber Terrace, so then that can get in before the home building construction, so we won't have to run through the current development. So, and I know you guys are currently in process of working on that, so that would be ideal in our situation as well, to just come right off of Marsh Lake. But during the actual site construction, you know, they're bigger trucks, they can dump the loads right through that lot 1 with the existing driveway, so that's not a problem. Even all the pipe work, we can get in through that driveway.
So that gets your initial setup, grading, utilities, all that stuff. And
Yep.
I think that maybe the residents' concern is like, now, once that's been done, because
Yeah,
that's just approximately how long of a process do you anticipate the grading and utility work and storms and supplies? And
that would be less than about 60 days. It's a pretty quick project, but kind of get late in the year, so we're just trying to see how far we get and try and coordinate that with the Timber Terrace. Would be nice to get that all at once, but it's kind of on timing here, so we're getting close to the end of the year here. Crazy, it's already almost
Right.
July here, so.
So I guess we have a delicate dance, right? We have to work on the easement and getting finalized on the cost sharing.
Yeah.
Then start to put shovels in the ground. And then, if I could just ask you, is your concern about the construction traffic, is that the actual construction of the subdivision, or once that's done, it's the traffic of contractors coming in, plumbers, et cetera, framers, roofers, all that during the building of the homes?
Linda Margot, 9540 Bridal Way. My concern is the construction traffic that's currently impacts the neighborhood, and with this happening, the additional traffic that would impact the neighborhood. That's what my concern is. I'm not opposed to the development at all, just the flow of traffic through the neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Commissioners, any other concerns? Any thoughts on this? This has been a complex one from the original proposal. The trees, identifying the apple trees, I mean, that's a pretty short life tree, so that makes sense. Any other issues? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion.
I'd like to move to recommend approval of the Timber Glen preliminary plat and rezoning as presented and discussed.
I second that motion.
Very good. Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all. Our last discussion item for this evening is item 3.4, the 2022 mid-year report to council. I will now turn this over to Planner Isaac Peterson to present the highlights of the Planning Commission mid-year report. Isaac?
Thank you, Chair. I promise I won't keep you all here too much longer, but just a quick overview. It is that time of the year to go over our mid-year report for council. So just a little background here. The City Council, early on in the strategic planning initiative that the council undertakes, identified a request for mid-year and end-of-the-year oral reports from various committees and commissions, just as a touch base moment to speak to the council about what the committee, and in this case the commission, is looking at So that report is to be presented by the chair or vice chair of the commission, and is intended to kind of highlight what the commission's work plans and goals and progress is. So this year for the mid-year report, the report is scheduled for Monday, June 23rd at the council meeting. So just to kind of do a quick run through of what we've looked at so far this year, and some background. At our January 18th meeting, the commission adopted your 2022 work plan and calendar, and in addition reviewed the sketch plat for the Brookmore development. The following meeting on February 1st, the commission reviewed the final plat for Marsh Hollow First Edition, which was recommended for approval to the council. February 15th, you all reviewed the sketch plat for the Glen property that we just saw. In addition, reviewed and discussed the residential zoning district code language and bulk regulations discussion topic pertaining to ADUs, home occupations, and daycare facilities. At the following meeting on March 1st, you all reviewed and discussed further the residential zoning district code language and bulk regulations.
Sir, Isaac, may I interrupt you a moment?
Yeah, for sure.
I thought that you said that this was going to be presented to council at Monday, June 23rd. On this presentation in the agenda packet, it's Monday, June 13th.
Ooh.
Am I correct in that? Or
Yeah,
incorrect?
June 13th, sorry. Must have been a typo within the presentation. It's the following meeting from this meeting, so next Monday.
So this coming Monday, June 13th, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
My apologies. Moving along here, on April 5th, there was the nomination of chair and vice chair. Of course, Chair Iverson was elected chair and Vice Chair Vansky. In addition, there was the public hearing request and variance review for the that Zumber Drive front yard setback request, which was recommended for approval. On April 19th, reviewed the sketch plat for Huntersbrook Second Edition and did a overarching review and discussion of the city's transportation update from engineer Guerin. May 3rd, there was the conditional use permit public hearing for the Humanity Alliance, which was recommended for approval. And on May 17th, the commission held a public hearing to consider the preliminary plat and zoning for the Brookmore development at our last meeting, which is recommended for approval. And of course, tonight we had a couple of items on the agenda, going over our report here now, the Glen preliminary plat, and the variance request and Volksfest sign permit. So kind of looking up on the horizon at our next meeting, just to give a overview of what we're looking forward towards. At our next meeting later this month, we'll be reviewing a sketch plat and concept plan proposed by Monarch Development pertaining to the Gannon property across the street, along with the city's parking lot. So you'll get an opportunity to take a look at that concept plan, which is proposing some mixed use elements and additional parking, public parking in a structured format. So it'll be an interesting one, an exciting one for the commission to provide feedback on. In addition, we'll have another variance request regarding a maximum impervious surface requirement, which will be a first since I've been here for a variance request. So that'll be coming up as well. In July, we'll have the Downtown West Phase 1 preliminary plat, conditional use permit, and TIF hearing for the commission to review. So that's the first big project in Downtown West. And it'll be a great opportunity for the commission's review to look at that first development site, which is proposing one apartment building with 146 units. And then in addition, I know we've hit the pause button with some of the changeover that's been happening on the residential zoning district discussion. But that will be picked up based on your prior comments, which staff has certainly not forgot, with some draft code language for the commission to review. And then in addition, we've got, because of the preliminary plats and sketch plats that the commission has looked at, we are anticipating that the Brookmore final plat, Timber Glen final plat, and will be on their way for review. In addition, the Hunter's Brook second preliminary plat is scheduled for the commission's review in August, and has been submitted to the city for staff review. So we're working towards having a development plan on Hunter's Brook second for review. And then in addition, we're anticipating that later this year, we'll be conducting the follow-up to the small area plan, the Victoria Works plan, and kind of taking a second look at that for the South Growth area and commercial area, which the commission will be a big part of pulling together a small area plan and reviewing what the future and the kind of roadmap for what that area looks like coming down the line. As you all know, there's been a lot of moving south. So now we're at that point where the city's got to be prepared for taking that next step and being ready for proposals. So that's kind of the bones behind that. In addition, we'll be hoping to review potential ordinance additions and amendments to address placemaking standards, particularly downtown, and kind of looking at the cohesive look of downtown and if there's any elements.
That's signage?
What's that?
Is placemaking signage?
Among many things, it could be.
What else is placemaking?
Yeah, great question, Commissioner Schwartz.
Could be.
Pardon?
It's anything that makes you realize where you are within the confines of an area. So it's pretty broad. Like,
So it's called open your eyes?
so like even the band shell could be considered placemaking.
Correct.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah. Commissioner.
Well, we already got a banner. We're going to have the banner.
Banner is a placemaking.
Sandwich boards.
Only for 10 days.
The clock tower, all that stuff.
Yeah. Members of the committee, as Commissioner Murray stated, it's a broad category. I think the intention for why it was placed on the strategic plan by the council and commission's work plan is to look at some of those elements, because there's been infill development downtown. Things are changing. There's no longer a lumber yard off of Victoria Drive. What is that image and feel and look, and what are those items that identify downtown Victoria as downtown Victoria, which can range from signage, public signage, to street art, to some architectural elements that we'd look for in building proposals. So there's a number of different directions that could go, but it'll certainly be a discussion that warrants a lot of discussion. And then in addition, planning on participating requesting that the commission provides input on a potential rental licensing program for the city. The city currently doesn't have an active rental licensing and inspection program. So as you know, with the single-family development that was proposed to the south, just north of the railroad tracks, and some of the multifamily proposals that we're receiving, installing and developing a rental licensing program is going to be important and has been identified as a topic.
Do we do it for Airbnbs? I think some towns do it for that, don't they?
Good question.
Try to limit the number of Airbnbs they can have, or takes away from hotel lodging taxes that many towns get. You don't have to worry about that presently. But.
Commissioner Schwarting, chair, members of the commission, we currently don't have regulations on short-term rentals or Airbnbs, VRBOs, say through the eyes of the code, respected in the same eyes as a regular rental. But that certainly is a hot topic issue.
Seems like it'd be hard to enforce something too.
Yeah. Prior to coming to the city of Victoria, my first gig out of college was working in a community in Michigan, which is a very touristy area, and that was one of the items that we did was develop an short-term rental code, and it was very interesting to enforce. There's actually programs, not to get on a tangent, but that some rental companies use to remove the postings during the day and only advertise on the weekends. So it is interesting. But yeah, a lot to discuss on that front. Interesting. And then regarding progress on the commission's work plan, the commission's reviewed a number of sketch plats, preliminary plats, one final plat, 2 variances, and a conditional use permit this year. So doing the commission's obligations in full force. And then in addition, we're going to continue to work on the residential zoning district standards, which is in progress and plan to resume. And then also, as I noted earlier this evening when we talked about the sign, one of the commission's work plan items is to review the sign regulation codes, particularly as it relates to temporary signs, which is not yet started, but anticipated to be started Q1 of 2023. And then again, the retail or rental licensing program is anticipated to come up, but it has not yet been started, along with the Victoria Works review, which is anticipated to be started, but not yet there yet. And again, we have been reviewing the residential zoning and PUD review. So that's all I have, and I'd love to hear the commission's thoughts and open it up to any discussion that you all have, Mr. Chair.
Very good. So our representative for the semi-annual review is going to be Vice Chair Greg Ivansky, who will have the honor of representing us. So that will occur very, very, very shortly. Any thoughts on the overall issues that were identified? I guess that's pretty much, as in the past, it's they have identified exactly what we've been doing. So
Yeah, I think Isaac summarized it well, and I think Greg is a perfect person
Thank you.
to represent us at the city council.
Isaac, if I could just have one tiny request on the variances, it would be nice to present where are they now, so just a quick blurb, like, this is the impact that we did, because I think that the Zumbra property with somebody deciding to stay in our community, it'd be nice to just trumpet that accomplishment to the council so that, that
For sure.
they could show that these things have meaning to our citizens.
Absolutely. Great point.
any other comments on this item?
Not this item, it's something separate.
Something separate? Okay, very good. With that, I will then close that item. And moving on to the miscellaneous section of our agenda. One of the, I had told some other people I was going to mention Christian Peterson, who was at city council meeting and had talked about the survey. And I read through the survey. And has everyone had the opportunity or have taken the opportunity to?
No, I completed the survey, so I knew all the right answers. I didn't really need to read any.
Yes.
You were in a minority. What was it? 30% that were sent out were completed, ironically. But I think it's pretty interesting. I went through, and the areas that are probably applicable to what we're doing, at least I like to think that, is quality of life, place to live, 97%, good to excellent. Well-planned residential growth, good to excellent, 69%. That may be a bit subjective at the same time. Well-designed neighborhoods, 78%. Trails, 82%, good to excellent. Not bad. Park and Rec, I think that we, you know, they gave 92% good to excellent. Quite frankly, I think I would have given that a bit higher at the same time. I think we've done a great job on that. Quality of natural environment, which is trees and lakes. And you know, here was the topic tonight. We're doing everything we can reasonably to maintain that. 95% was the view of everyone. Shopping came in at a paltry 20% good to excellent. And I don't think anyone would debate that. As a matter of fact, maybe, you know, maybe that 20% was a little bit higher maybe than what it should be. City government, in this era, 83%, which I thought was good to excellent, I thought was pretty remarkable, actually. I was a little surprised that it would be that high at the same time, versus the federal government that came in at 36%. So, but resident participation in this survey was 20%. And I think that's probably about average. I know in corporate America, it's a lot less than that. It actually gets into single digit for active participation. So I guess we're not doing too well, but yep, 30% responded and 70 didn't. So, so that's a. I think it's something that we should all take a look at and say. So here's, you know, public hearings. What are we here to do at the same time? So I think that was pretty good. City council report.
I was at the city council meeting on May 23rd. The consent agenda was passed, everything on there except for item 5.9, which was regarding issuance of conduit revenue notes, which was pulled from the agenda. I had the great fortune of sitting through the independent auditor's report, which thank you, whoever developed the schedule. I'll call Marty Dahl. It was fine. It was done by MMK&R. It was a clean opinion. There was no findings. Councilman Gunderson made a point of just bringing up the fact that there was only 143 new home starts in 2021, which was a 30% reduction over the years previous. I think he just wanted to point that out. I would say with all the activity we've had coming through city council, we'll probably be on the upswing next year. So I don't know if it's that much concern.
Based on the number of big trucks I see rolling down 18, it's hard to believe.
I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
The Brookmore development preliminary plat was approved as it was, so there was some discussion about the park there, but it was approved. They did authorize a couple of requests by the city engineer. One was the feasibility study for Steiger Lake Lane and the West Phase 1 improvements to connect the downtown to downtown west, extend the sanitary sewer to the 13 acres and replace the water main to Lake Bridge for it to be a 50-year improvement and to put the power lines underground. So that feasibility study was kind of a combined request, but that went through. And then also the second thing was to accept the bids for Highway 11 improvements and an award a contract to, they awarded the contract to Meyer with a $7.91 million budget, and that was approved, and that was basically it.
That was, there was a lot of money spent in the last city council meeting, a lot that, quite frankly, had to be.
Yeah, a lot of improvements on roads, which we need to do if we want development.
Yep, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you know, and looking at the last 6 months, and our workload is going to increase dramatically, certainly in the next number of years, in a huge way. Is there any other? Laura, you had something?
It's just miscellaneous. So I'm just curious, Isaac, can you comment to the status of the proposed? I think we had a concept meeting to discuss the project that's south on 5, where the Ridgeview development was going to occur, and then the daycare, and then
The roundabout,
bank. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the bank and all?
coffee
Yes.
shop, Monkey Joe, or
Yeah.
Java monkey?
Java Monkey, whatever.
Mocha.
Mocha.
Java monkey.
Mocha
Mocha monkey.
Mocha monkey.
Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission. The current status, and if we kind of track with the council's recommendation from the concept plan review, was to undertake a traffic study. So that's where we're at currently, where Bolton and Menk was contracted by the city with a cost share. The developer is paying for the majority of that traffic study to review the feasibility and cost of a roundabout that would serve the site, to see if it was a possibility. So that's underway right now. So we've had ongoing coordination on that front, but it is not yet concluded.
Has there been any feedback from Met Council? Because Met Council would have to approve any type of roundabout.
Commissioner Moore, MnDOT?
MnDOT, excuse me.
Yeah. Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission, so city staff is coordinating with MnDOT. I think the anticipation is when the traffic study is concluded and these elements that our consultant are working through with MnDOT, MnDOT would then provide more formal comment at that point.
Thank you.
And there was certainly some very, very well-defined concerns on the subsurface, I guess, of that area for the roundabout and for the road at the same time. But MnDOT's working on that, and you know, the indications that I've heard is that it'll just be a bit more expensive, but it's not a major problem. So, any other items? I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one that you know, just kind of, it was there and it was active, and now it's, you know, really not heard of. Hearing nothing else, I would accept a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.